Yes, what's up guys? So today's video is going to be my session with my personal trainer. So I've got myself a personal trainer to help me with certain movements and getting my form and technique down. So let's jump into that. Alright, so what we're doing here is just going over a bit of my hinge movement. We covered it last session I had with him, so just doing a bit of RDL, making sure I'm hinging at the hip and keeping her back nice and straight and not bending my knees too much. And yeah, it's a really good way to warm up, making sure you've got enough movement in your hips, because you don't want to be bending your back too much, because that's how you can get injured. And here he's just showing me how to keep my legs nice and straight and not have too stiff of the knees, because that can cause an injury as well. Alright, here we're just talking about, obviously, my technique, making sure I'm getting it down to a T, and he will demonstrate me how to do it properly in a minute. And he's just saying, at the moment I'm bending my knees a little bit too much, so he's just going to demonstrate how to do it properly here. Alright, so now we're just moving over to a bench press, and at the moment he's just watching my form, making sure I've got a good arch in my back, so when I do go heavier I'm not putting too much strain on my back. And yeah, it's just a good way to make sure your technique's good. If you've got someone, he's checking to see if he can fit his fist under my back, and that's to show that I've got a good enough arch. Alright, so what he's doing here is making sure my feet are positioned correctly, and then he's going to check to make sure I've got the proper arch in my back, as you can see here. And then also another thing he's noticed is I was doing a bit of a guillotine press instead of a proper bench press, so he's just telling me to push a bar a bit further forward. And now we're moving on to a shoulder press, and he's just watching my technique at the moment, making sure I'm pressing it properly and got a good form and technique on shoulder press. And he's telling me not to push too far up because That way I will end up incorporating more of my chest, and he's just telling me to not push so far up so it stays a shoulder exercise. Alright, so what we're doing here is we're changed up the angle to hit more of the front of her shoulder, so we've just tucked the elbows in a bit more, and he's there just giving me the support, making sure I'm following the correct path for her weights. So what he's doing here is showing me to put the weights near the front of my knees for when I kick up, and then obviously we're concentrating on keeping the front of her chest activated as well as the front of her shoulders, so we're pulling the shoulders and elbows in a little bit more, and this really changes the dynamic, and you are going to be able to do less weight because it's a hell of a lot harder of an exercise than just a normal shoulder press. And now what we're about to do is a bit of a chest fly on the cables, and he's going to just direct me on how to keep attention and point out to keep my elbows at the right angle and not to have too much of a bend in them, and just telling me like making sure I've got the right stretch in the muscle. And basically what he's doing here is saying I shouldn't be pushing it above his hand and keeping it at a level weight, and this is a hell of a painful exercise to do because you've got constant tension on your muscles. And then what we're doing here is when I get to fail is changing it into a more of a pushing exercise, and so just changing up the angle and the grip. So the last thing we covered today is doing delt raises, and basically he's just telling me to sit back on my hips a bit more and not to engage my traps so much, and he's just telling me it should be going out in a diagonal line, not straight out. And now he's just making sure my form is there, keeping the tension, and we are supersetting this into a shoulder press. So we're doing it with quite lightweight at the moment because obviously we've had a long session and the fatigue is kicking in, and when you're obviously supersetting it, you've already pre-exhausted the muscles. And what he's doing here is making sure I'm pushing it straight up and trying to keep her straight back and to sit back on my hips a bit more. But yeah, it's a killer to do. Right, so there's that one. I can really feel the tension in my chest from the cable flies, and it's really good to have tension on your muscles after a workout because it means you've stretched them and you've broken them down. And if you are thinking about getting a personal trainer, I advise doing a bit of research and contacting a couple, because different personal trainers have different styles of teaching, and it's best to find one which suits you best.